So one of the most ancient deities, and if you watch the movie The Mummy, actually, I just checked out a bit of that movie last night, because I'm into watching movies about that type of stuff, Egyptian stuff, and just ancient mythology and all that. But if you watch that movie, they talk about Set. They talk about the dagger of Set. And Set was one of the most ancient deities. And what is Set? Well, for one thing, it was an ancient Egyptian deity. And what Set was during the day, you had the sun. And the sun, historically, through the Bible, throughout all religions, throughout all theologies, the sun in the sky has always represented the Son of God. Because, now if you think about it, it really makes a lot of sense. And this is, when I started learning this stuff, it started clicking. Things just started making sense, because it makes far more sense than a man coming down from the clouds and here, the Son of God, he's gonna save us and this and that. Not for nothing, there were 16 messiahs that died on the cross before Jesus. The Son has been dying on the cross forever, as far as we know. It's been happening. It happens in the sky. The sun dying on the cross happens in the sky every single winter solstice on December 22nd. And let me explain it real quick for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. The sun sets in a different location every day, and it's in a 1 degree different location. So if it sets here tomorrow, it sets here, the next day here, the next day here. 1 degree difference every day. Now, a long time ago, the ancient Egyptians realized by making a sundial on the ground and looking at the shadow that every day the sun moves, except for all of a sudden on December 22nd, which I know December didn't exist back then, the name December, it's all this, these are the months that we get now. It used to be different. It was 13 moons, was 13 moon cycles, and there were 10 months at one point. So this whole calendar has been flip-flopped and changed. However, and they added the 2 months, 2 more months. Now, they did that, all that happened in Caesar's time. However, when we're talking about Set and these ancient deities, now, one of the first belief systems was basically day and night, okay? Because during the day, the sun came out. It was God's son. He was the Son of God. And the Son of God gave light to the earth. He was the Savior. In the morning, he comes up, and he is the risen Savior, God's Son, because he gives light and life to the earth. Without the sun, we would have no life on earth. Think about what happens every single spring when the sun gets stronger and it comes back to the northern hemisphere. The sun gives life to the earth. Now on December 22nd, the sun, like I said, actually stops moving that 1 degree when it sets, and it sets in the same location every day for 3 days in a row. This happens. Now, the ancient people believed because the sun stops moving for 3 days that the sun is dead in its tomb. And after the 3rd day, on December 25th, the sun actually begins to move again, and it begins to move 1 degree again. Now, the ancient people believed because the sun stopped moving, it was dead. And on December 25th, the sun rose from the dead and starts to move again. Now, this is the Son of God coming back to life, being resurrected from the dead. Now, the sun historically, of God especially, and in all of these ancient mythologies and all these ancient stories, you have the Son of God being born of a virgin. Now, this is why all of these ancient messiahs that I said, there were over 16 of them that were died and born of a virgin and all this. Why? It's because Virgo the Virgin is a early summertime constellation. That's when you see it in the northern hemisphere. So the sun dying in December on the cross, because where does this whole thing happen? This winter solstice, where does this sun die? Well, ironically, where this happens is it's the same spot every year, and it happens directly underneath and to the right of the cross in the sky that's formed by 4 stars, and it's the smallest constellation. It's the smallest of the 88 constellations, and it's called the Southern Cross, or the Southern Crux. This is where the sun dies, on the cross, and it's been happening forever. The ancient people knew this. They understood that the sun dies on the cross, and they wrote religions about it. Now, not only does the sun die on the cross and it is reborn, but it is reborn to a virgin. Because now, after the winter time, the sun in the sky is being reborn after it dies in its tomb on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. But after it dies and comes back from the dead, it is born of a virgin, the sun. Because Virgo the Virgin is the constellation in the sky that you see. So the sun, God's son, the Son of God, is born of a virgin. This is why there is a statue of the Virgin Mary in the Vatican holding a sun, a circular disc with the crown. The crown of Jesus is the rays of the sun. And same with Moses. Look up an old statue of Moses. I guarantee you it's going to have horns. Why does it have horns? Because Moses represents Aries, okay? Now, since we're starting to understand that this is all the sky, it all happens in the sky. And if you don't believe me, okay, if you need more proof, in the Bible it says that Jesus appeared on a cloud and he left on a cloud. Look at the sky and tell me that the sun doesn't appear on a cloud and leave on a cloud. The Son of God, it absolutely does. It's appearing on a cloud right now. The sun leaves on a cloud. This happens. It happens. The sun walks on water. When you watch the sun walk across the ocean, the sun walks on water. Okay? This actually happens. Now, since the Son of God is the sun, we also have to understand the words sun and sun have been reversed, because in Old Germanic, the sun in the sky was an S-O-N, and your sun was an S-U-N. And they changed that when they Romanized the languages. So what we have now is the Son of God being born of a virgin. Now in the Bible, it talks about Judas betraying Jesus, and he kisses Jesus on the cheek. Now, what's interesting about this is, if you study ancient times, you'll understand very quickly that, first of all, when we're talking about identifying people, there has never been a time in history where men were kissing each other in the street to identify them. I'm sorry. Maybe now, right now, more than ever, but back thousands of years ago, they weren't kissing each other in the street to identify them. That wasn't happening. Number two, everybody allegedly knew who Jesus was. So in a tiny little rinky-dink town, I highly doubt they would need Judas to walk up to Jesus to identify him. Kings knew of him from other countries. Why would they need to identify him in a little Hoboken town? They wouldn't. Not to mention, if they did need to identify him, it wouldn't be done by a kiss. That's a little bit silly, and it makes no sense. So we got to start using common sense. What is this symbolizing? Because it symbolizes something, because, as I said, the New Testament is a metaphor for the Son of God, and the sun being the sun in the sky. It's a metaphor to learn, to become enlightened. You have to understand it. If you understand it, you become enlightened. It gives you the key to accessing enlightenment. That's the whole point of the New Testament. But anyway, so Judas kisses Jesus. Now why? Why does this happen? Well, it says to betray Jesus, to identify him. That's what the story is. That's what the priests tell us. That's what the church teaches us. What's interesting, though, is Scorpio, the scorpion, is also a constellation, and it's a fall constellation. It's the constellation of the fall. Why is it the fall? Well, it's the fall of the king, okay? In a lot of cultures and in a lot of even movies and things, the lion is the king, okay? The lion is the king. And the lion in the Bible, he is the king of the tribe of Judah, okay? The tribe of No, the Lion of Judah. Yeah, in the Bible, the king, there actually, you have a couple, because you have the lion is the king in the tribe of Judah, okay? But you also have Jesus being the king. Now, the king, so think about it. The lion is the king in the tribe of Judah. The lion is Leo the lion in the sky. It's a summertime constellation. Now the king, so you can look at the king like the lion, the king of the jungle, the king, or you can look at the king as Jesus, because Jesus is the king, right? So the king is now in the sky, okay? You have the lion, Leo the lion, but it's the king in the sky. And the whole idea of fall, where it even came up with, was because the king in the sky, after the summertime, that's when he rises up and he's the highest, he's the king. After the summertime, he begins to actually tilt over and fall out of the sky, because Leo, the lion, the king, is now leaving the sky. So essentially you have Jesus dying on the cross, the southern crux, right? Then you have him born of a virgin, the Virgo, okay? Then you have him as the king in the sky. Now you have Judas kissing Jesus. What is that? That is, Judas represents Scorpio. Because ironically, when you would get stung, when you got stung by a scorpion in ancient times, okay, they referred to it as the kiss of death, because a scorpion actually leaves lip marks when it stings you, because it has 2 stingers, 2. So it leaves lip marks. The Italian mafia has played off this, the kiss of death. This is where this phrase comes from, okay? And this is the kiss of a scorpion. Judas represents Scorpio because he's kissing the king and symbolizing that the king is going to be dying, which he does after the winter, when he dies on the cross. So Judas is Scorpio. He's the scorpion. It's the kiss of death, and he is representing that the king is about to die and become resurrected. It's, like I said before, all metaphorical, and it starts to make sense when you do the work and you do the research. But I've said this before, the only people that learn are the people willing to learn. If you think you know it all, you're never going to learn anything. So if that's your attitude, best of luck to you. And I'll see you when you're ready to learn. And I'm sure there'll be a day, unless you don't make it that far, because a lot of people just don't. Accidents happen, things happen. So hopefully you can figure it out before, it's potentially too late. But I thank God every day. He kept me awake, and he kept me humble enough to take on new information at all times, because that's the only way you learn. Now, another thing, I could keep going about this. I could talk about this for hours. When in the Bible, when we have a part in the Bible when Jesus tells Luke and Peter, I believe, to go looking for the man with the pitcher of water, because they're about to have the Last Supper. And they need to know where to have the Last Supper, because Jesus is about to die. This is another story of Jesus is about to die, and they need the Last Supper. They need to find where to go. So Jesus says, go into the town and look for the man with the pitcher, holding the pitcher of water. And that's where I will have my final dinner. What is the man holding a pitcher of water? Well, this one's an easy one, okay? After Pisces, which is Jesus, the fish. Jesus fed the people with the fish. He's the fisherman of men. He turns men into fishermen. He is the fisherman of men. He's the fish. He represents fish. Jesus is Pisces. Aries was Moses, 2,000 years before. And I'll make sense of this later. But so Aquarius is after Pisces. It goes Aries, Pisces, Aquarius. The sign for Aquarius is a man holding a pitcher of water. So what Jesus is saying is, go find the man holding a pitcher of water, and when I die, he's coming up next. That's what he's saying, because that's what happens. Because right now we are in the age of Pisces. This happens in the sky. It's all happens through astronomy, okay? Astrology. When you're looking in the sky and it is the spring equinox, you can check this out on the spring equinox. If you wait until right before the sun comes up and the moon's still out and the stars are still out, and you look into the eastern hemisphere, if whatever constellations you're looking at right in front of you, whatever constellation that is, that's the age that we're in. Now, this changes, but it changes every 2,126 years, 25 years, something like that, around that. 2,120 something years. And this shifts, and it's been happening for forever. And it's encoded in the Bible, it's encoded in the pyramids. So you can look out, like I said, on the equinox, and you can look and see that we're almost through Pisces and we're almost in Aquarius. People that know this stuff think we're a couple hundred years away, 200-300 years, maybe not, maybe closer, maybe later, who knows. However, those are rough estimates. Now, this will change eventually, and it will be, like I said, into Aquarius. What's Aquarius? It's the man holding the pitcher of water. The Bible encodes, it encodes a long time. There's like 6,000 years of information in there, okay? 6,000 years of the stars, the constellations going perfectly around us, all encoded in the Bible. Moses was Aries. This is why when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, which Mount Sinai, if you didn't know this, Sinai, when you break those words apart, you figure out what the word means. Sin was an ancient god, okay? An ancient god, an ancient Phoenician, ancient Phoenician, Babylonian, Egyptian god. People worship sin for a long time. Sin was the moon god. And the word Ai in Hebrew meant mountain. That's what the word meant. So the word Mount Sinai, all that means is mountain of the moon god. That's what it means, the translation. So really what's going on here is, back in the day, when you have Moses back in the day, we're talking about 4,000 plus years ago, okay? They didn't worship what we worship. It's a total different thing back then. They worshiped the moon. They took mushrooms. They tripped out. They worshiped sex because, that's how you make a baby. Now, there's proof of eating mushrooms and all of this. There's proof of it in the Bible. If you don't believe me, you can open up your Bible. There's plenty of talk about it in Exodus. But it's all about when Moses is walking his people through the desert, and they're starving and they're dying for food and they have nothing to eat. And they pray to God, and God tells them, don't worry about it, I got you. Just wake up tomorrow morning, it'll rain, and there's going to be something on the ground for you. So the description in the Bible is, after a rainy, dewy night, they wake up and there's a white, flaky, round substance on the ground that could be boiled and would melt in your mouth and was delicious. Every description of it gives you mushrooms. Came out after the rain. It was found on the ground. It grew out of the ground. Like, everything about it was mushrooms, okay? So the Bible is telling us that Moses and his people took a bunch of mushrooms and they started talking to God. Of course they would talk to God after taking a bunch of mushrooms, okay? The ancient people, what we have to understand is they worshipped sex. They worshipped all of this stuff. Why? Because, again, sex, you make a baby. Now, if you don't believe me, just think about circumcision. They say it's holy. It's a holy thing to be circumcised. Are you sure? I don't know what's so holy about a man putting his hands on my penis and cutting it off, cutting a chunk of it off. I don't understand, why is that holy, okay? I understand it meant it was cleanliness and this and that, but it's not. It wasn't. It was designed for sex, because when you got rid of that, it made it easier for you to get an erection. You got the shell casing off of it, and now you can get an erection easier, okay? You could brush up against something and get an erection. That's what it was about, because it was about, again, making children. There is nothing holy. Not to mention, God makes you, right? Didn't God make us? So why are we changing what God made? Because God made us perfect, didn't he? I don't think he made mistakes. So why are we doing corrective surgery here? I don't think we should be. So that's just another example. Now, I mean, I could go on, and I haven't even looked at a single sheet of paper yet, but I could go on because I don't have a lot of the Bible verses memorized by, you know, the exact verse that they are. But in some of these verses, Acts 1:9, and after he had said these things, he was lifted up while they were looking on, and a cloud received him out of their sight. Matthew 17:5, while he was still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." So a voice came out of the clouds. Then a cloud formed overshadowing them, and a voice came from the cloud, "This is my beloved Son, listen to them." Mark 9:7. Luke 9:34. While he was saying this, a cloud formed and began to shadow them, and they were afraid as they entered the cloud. We're talking about the sun in the sky, okay? The sun in the sky is the Son of God. It's symbolism, okay? Now, let me see this. What did we said? And Jesus said, "I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven." You will see the Son of God seated at the right hand, because it dies on the right hand of the cross, the Southern Crux, every single year. It's been happening forever, okay? Now, let's see. We have, right here, we have, let's take a look. We have 12, a lot of 12 references. Yes. I'm gonna have to... Yep. All right.